Today's video is going to be super fun. We're picking up my buddy Justin and actually driving him to closing on his first ever wholesale deal. So super cool. I did my first deal, gosh, back in like 2016. So I kind of have forgotten the excitement and nervousness that comes with doing your first deal. So really cool to get to share this with him. We're going to make it really fun for him. I had your theme song on. You pumped?
Yep.
Yeah? This is your first one ever, right?
Yep.
Real quick, what's like the number one thing you learned doing your first deal?
Don't do an inspection period, and don't be as gracious on the after repair value estimate. Luckily my rehab values have been a little conservative, so it hasn't bit me in the butt.
I'm gonna park over here so it doesn't look like you're getting dropped off by your boys in a pickup.
Sweet. Appreciate it.
Or like your dad gave you a ride to closing. Hey. You done?
All done.
Did it happen? Oh, wait, what you got there?
What you got there? Got a little check for $11,000.
And every time I step up in the building, everybody hands go up.
Congrats on the first of many.
And they stay there, and they say yeah, and they say that.
So Justin and I just got back to my house after showering him with gifts and confetti and sparklers because we celebrate like grown men in this household. And yeah, I was gonna say a tiara, but it's a crown for boys.
It's a crown.
Justin, why don't you kind of walk us through how you're feeling? Like, first deal closed. This now is something that you've proven can make money.
Yeah, this one, I was nervous pretty much every step of the way because it kind of fell through once, had to bring it back. I felt like I was yo-yoing the seller a little bit and, was worried like I'm trying to, get the win for the seller as well. And then even this morning, got a text from the buyer of, oh, hey, I've got to move my closing back from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. And I was like, please don't fall through. It's okay. I called them. So very glad to be on the backside of it. Very glad the seller even called while the buyer and I were signing for closing. That he had forgotten to leave the key. So even still had to coordinate that at the closing table. So
there you go. So how'd you find this one?
This one came from Google pay-per-click stuff you had me set up.
Cool.
So that actually worked, which when he
I
called
try
was...
to recommend things that work.
That work. I guess I just wasn't expecting it yet because I wasn't expecting to rank on Google at all, Yeah. I just kind of set it up as one of those like, all right, start running, start doing your thing.
Yeah.
And then he called and asked me, I was like, how did you find me? He was like, I Googled and found you. So,
are you using a like template site? Is it a carrot site? Is it a WordPress?
Using a carrot site.
Okay.
Just kind of.
Do you know like what plan you're on?
I'm on the middle one,
Okay.
so not the pro marketer, whatever their highest one is.
The one below it.
I can still access their content and
Okay.
still use a little bit of some of the stuff they put out.
Cool. So walk us through kind of like the time frame on this, because I think a lot of people before they do a deal, they're under the impression that it's like somebody calls on a Monday, you get it under contract on Tuesday, it closes on Wednesday, happy sparkler time, $12,000 check.
Yeah, no. So this one, he called me beginning of October.
Okay.
And set up an appointment. He was interested and just kind of did the, I'm just interested to see what you would offer type thing, And I was like, okay, no problem. Are you okay with us setting up an appointment and come out, and that way I can figure out, exactly what I'd be able to offer you? And he was like, sure. So came out to his place, and with this one, I kind of had a growth process in
well, I mean, you're
my
brand new
selling.
to this.
I'm brand new.
Yeah.
I did not come from sales background at all.
So for people who don't know you, which is probably going to be, I've known you for like 2 months now. So you are just recently went reserves, were a helicopter pilot?
Yep. 60
In the
Sierra
Navy?
pilot in the Navy.
It's pretty badass.
Flying was the best part of my day.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Okay.
But yeah, did that for 11 years.
Okay. And when did you like start the real estate stuff?
I'm calling official start date probably like August.
Okay.
And then I think my first round of mailers went out September.
Okay.
But that was when I started
Cool.
like, focusing on the business.
I want people to know that you're not like, this isn't something you'd done before. You didn't grow up in or around real estate. Like,
Nope.
you were flying helicopters for the Navy, just a little bit back. Hey, I need to do something.
Yeah.
Now that you're going reserves. So, okay. All right. Sorry to cut you off. So, started in kind of October talking to the guy.
Yep. And like I said, not coming from a sales background, I was one of the ones that kind of had to work through my pitch process of, trying to figure out like, okay, what is your need? Like, what can I offer you for a cash offer?
Yep.
And this one, I think my wife and I had the conversation that this was my first one that I was going to try and make an offer on site, like,
all right,
like before I left,
there you go.
And not, go home and verify all my numbers. I'd looked at everything, tried to get a solid ARV for his place beforehand, and just from the pictures of anything I could find on it, it was like guesstimating a rehab price or rehab cost, and so I kind of knew my numbers going into it, and then knew where I needed to be for range. Yep,
it's ideal.
And was like, okay, I'm gonna try and pitch it for the first time and see if he's willing to sign, like, brought a contract with me, and that was a first. And I also had to.
Was he?
For what?
Did you lock it up on the spot?
I did.
Oh.
I did. I wrote up the contract.
There you go.
There's actually a really funny story in that one too. And I was one of the guys that kind of had to wrap my mind around, like, how do I pitch somebody? Because it's kind of like, hey, this is the best I can do, but I didn't feel like I feel like some deals slipped through, in the last month and a half of me just trying to sound confident.
Repairs or underestimating, or
I've found post facto I'm a little generous on my ARVs, that needed to dial that in a little bit more, but no, like being like, hey, this is how much I can offer you. Is that enough? Almost kind of like feeling bad for presenting them a cash offer and not seeing that, their need for having a cash offer was valid enough for, me to offer that price and not feel bad about it. And then also,
so not coming from it from a position of confidence of like, I'm making you a good offer for your property as it sits, and more like, hey, this is what I can do.
Yeah, is that okay with you? And then I kind of realized,
if not, I can pay more.
Yeah, trying to avoid that. And so I kind of, what flipped it for me was kind of having a good as-is value in my mind of like what they could sell for on the MLS. Be like, hey, I'm not an agent, but this is how much, I think your house could sell for on the MLS after commission fees. What do you think is necessary to, fix the place up to have it sell on the MLS for what you would like, and how much they would get off after an inspection. So it's like, okay, this is how much you would close with, and this is how much I can offer. And it would be about 10-15% kind of seem to be the ones that decide to go with a cash offer and that value. So realizing that is where I was able to kind of come into the deal with a little bit more confidence, and I think start working with some more people.
Cool.
So I did that with him. He was also one of the first rounds of doing that. And yeah, walked through the house with him, took all of the pictures, trying to keep it cool, and got to the end of the walk around, ended up in the kitchen, and was like, hey, you mind if I work some numbers real fast? He's like, yeah, go ahead. And so just finished up, the quick rehab numbers to insert into the equation. I was like, all right, I think I can offer you, how does 60,000 sound? And he was like, that sounds pretty good. And he didn't negotiate past that or anything. I was like, okay. I was like, let's do this. So like, you want me to write up the contract now? He's like, yeah, sure. So I'm standing at his kitchen counter, writing up the contract, and he starts telling me a story of how his buddy at work, when he told him that he had called me, was like, dude, that guy's not going to offer you anything. He's going to offer you like 35 grand, 40 grand for your house, and just try and totally lowball you.
Yeah.
And he tells me as I'm writing the contract that if I would have offered him like 45, he would have been happy with it. And I was like,
You're like,
not going back on this deal.
Reduce?
I was like, well, I guess it's a win for you.
Yeah,
I was like,
so that's a
which is the
win-win,
goal.
though. Yeah.
And I wasn't going to change it. I was actually really happy that that was a number that worked for me, and it was a number that was great for him. Pay off his debt. I think he walked with like $30,000.
Awesome.
After paying off the rest of his mortgage and stuff. So
One of the things that I liked was that you mentioned that when he called in, he kind of played like coy, of like, oh yeah, I just kind of want to see where you'd be at. I'm interested in maybe getting an offer. He wasn't like, yo, Justin, I'm in some debt, and they're going to take my charger if we don't get this figured out. Like, it was, I think investors a lot of the times, especially when they're new, would maybe write somebody like that off of like, why do you need to sell? Like, they're almost trying to sell themselves on why they shouldn't work the lead. So I think that's good on your part that you went through kind of the steps, because if you'd been like, well, I mean, he doesn't really sound serious, you would have totally missed this deal, which investors do all the time, especially when they're brand new.
yeah, starting out, I think I try and push everything to an appointment. But I also learned the hard way on some of my first calls, like some of the very first calls I got in.
Yeah.
Like, I almost switched into like a begging mode of like, just let me come and look at
Can
your...
I please come out?
just let me come and look at your place and I can get you, a better offer.
Yeah.
And one dude just raked me over the coals on the phone call and then just straight hung up on me.
So not everybody's nice either, which
Not
I think
everybody's
is
nice.
important for people that are planning on getting into this business. One of my buddies posted like a recording of a call of somebody just tearing him apart because they got a piece of mail. Somebody else was like, I don't understand why that would upset them that much. It's like, well, it doesn't make sense, but it still happens.
Yeah.
Like it's a give and take. So the interesting thing I think with this deal, from what I know about it, was you had a buyer who requested an inspection period, which, kind of pro tip, I normally don't give them. We'll normally be like, yeah, you can do it during your walkthrough, but we're not doing like a formal inspection. I have multiple people interested, etc. But after he got the results back of that inspection pulled out, and I think a lot of people at that point would have been like, well, this isn't a deal, or they would have like pushed for an extension with the seller. I love what you did instead, was like, no, I've got to make this happen. So the second guy you found, who ended up actually buying the property, how'd you find him?
That one I sent out, I pulled from PropStream,
Yep.
pretty much what you said. I had done agents with cash buyers.
Cool.
And then,
Which we'll link to above, so anybody who wants to copy that can.
Yep. And then the one I hadn't pulled yet, because it required skip tracing and a little bit more effort, was just pulling direct cash buyers in the last year.
Okay.
And so I pulled every cash buyer in Pensacola and sent the list up to batch skip tracing and had it done. And
So is that where this guy came from?
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
So
Sent
did
him
you,
the-
when you text blasted it out, did you include the deal in it?
Yes, it was an email blast out. So
Okay.
I skip traced everybody, and I started with just because it was a list of 350, I
Okay.
think, and 150 came back with emails.
Okay.
So I just sent it out
Nice.
to get it out, all the ones that had emails
Okay.
to start.
Cool.
And so it was kind of the email format
this guy
with the link
replied
to the
back to it?
pictures. And he replied back,
That's awesome.
said I was interested, or said he was interested, and came out and looked at it with his GC, and
Said, hey, we'll take it.
we'll take it.
How
And
many replies do you think you got back from those like 150?
One.
Okay, so that was what I was hoping you would say. It only takes one person.
It only
So,
takes one buyer.
Just because one person doesn't want it doesn't mean there's somebody else who won't. I've got a kick out of like over the years, I'll have a flip on the MLS and it's not selling. And some new buyer that who knows where they've been from all along shows up and they're like, oh my gosh, I love it. We'll pay your asking. And it's like, you could have showed up 4 months ago. That would have been great. So that's cool. You got one reply out of it, and that's the guy who bought the deal. The thing you did that I love that anybody new should take note of is you sent out the initial introduction with a deal.
Mm-hmm.
Guys like me, guys like the guy you sold this property to, get hit up all the time from people like, hey, can I add you to my buyer's list? What's your criteria? That never send them anything.
Mm-hmm.
So by starting out with, hey, I have a property you might be interested in, giving them something to look at, that guy was like, oh yeah, this is legit. Instead of, had you gone the whole like, hey, can I add you to my buyer's list? probably wouldn't even have gotten that one reply. So that's
Yeah.
solid.
Yeah.
All right, three biggest takeaways. If you could talk to Justin back in August, what advice would you give yourself on this?
I would say be a little bit more conservative on the ARVs.
Okay.
The life lesson about being confident in presenting your deals and understanding, wrapping your head around mentally that it is a good deal and it is a legitimate offer that you're offering. And then 3, I went soft even though I knew the pro tip, but you're trying to work with cash buyers and most who are professional investors. I mean, this guy's been doing it for 24 years and he definitely made the process smoother for that.
Yep.
And I was trying to do the first buyer a favor because, I mean, he said he was a little bit more uncomfortable with rehabs and asked for an inspection period. And I said yes. And I would probably just say no.
So make sure you're conservative in your ARVs. If you're strictly wholesaling and you can't afford to close, you want to make sure you're working with a buyer who is ready, willing, and able. And what was the third one? Or did you only give me
Inspection
2?
period.
Okay, got it. Don't give an inspection period if you don't have to. Yeah, I mean, we've made a lot more money on some deals by selling to people who aren't investors, like a conventional home buyer or something like that. But that's when we've had the cash lined up to close if we need to. We've got one right now that we're under contract. It's actually a lease option deal for $305,000. We listed it for $364. It got bid up to $395. And in order to get the thing closed, they were like, you got to buy this option. Like, we're not going to let you just like this thing. And it was like, okay. So that's a deal though, that if we didn't have the cash to close on it, we would have taken a much, much smaller wholesale fee. So I forget what the expression is there, but like a bird in the thing is better than one in the air, whatever that is.
Something about a bush.
Yeah, something about a bush and a bushel or something. Can you think of anything we haven't hit on this?
A bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush.
Okay.
I knew there was a bush.
There you go. You've mentioned a couple times of being conservative with the ARVs. Why is that?
Because this was the first one that closed, but
Okay.
not the first one I had under contract.
Okay.
And the first one I had under contract was another investor that has, I think, like 6 properties
Okay.
around here, mostly land.
Okay.
And he was trying to package a property that had vacant lots on either side of it.
Okay.
And he was trying to work a package deal with that. And I was still learning my processes a little bit and kind
Yep.
of refining those and how I take notes in the CRM and everything for those. And we started talking and I looked at my notes, was on the phone, on the fly, and I offered him how I used to annotate my max allowable offer without my fee in it or without any, leaving any
Buffer.
room for me.
Got it. So 75% minus repairs, basically.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Just straight.
On this deal, did you use like the 75% rule?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it was like a strictly like a how we're taught to wholesale, 75% minus repairs, minus what you want to make kind of
Yep.
a situation.
Yep.
Okay.
My goal is still to get people that burr. So
Cool.
it is the goal. But yeah, so he agreed to the price and I was all happy about it until I realized that night laying in bed, I was like, oh no.
It's always like when you're in bed. There's one of my favorite memes is like me laying in bed and it's like remembering that dumb thing I said 5 years ago.
So for anybody starting trying to wholesale and me going into the process, I had wanted it to be as smooth as possible and always have that hope in the back of your mind that it's going to be, you hear about all the smooth ones.
Nice
People
and easy.
Nice and easy. People start and that first month and their first mailer, they get 6 deals out of it. And I wished I was one of those stories, but I wasn't. So I started in August and didn't get my first check until November. This is my second one under contract. I've talked to a few hundred people on the phones, and I don't necessarily love the phones, but it's where you got to go
the
to
work part
make
of
the
this.
deals happen. Yeah, it's the W part of the job. But I would much rather be working for myself than working towards anybody else's goals or dreams, and rather be working towards my own. So if you work the process, it will come. trying to learn all the lessons you can from people that have gone before you, so you don't have to learn about inspection periods, firsthand. Yeah, it'll come.
huge.
It'll happen.
Justin, I appreciate you agreeing to hop on camera with me. I know it's not necessarily something you do all the time. You did great, but more importantly, dude, it's really cool to get to celebrate a moment like this with you. Definitely make sure you frame it. I kick myself for not saving mine. My wife accuses me of not having a sentimental bone in my body, which is accurate. I, for a little while, kept a little box of our things from over the years, like the bracelet she made me, the movie tickets. And there's one time we were moving and I was like, yeah, I don't need any of this. Just pitched it. So frame it, honor the moment, celebrate it, but congrats to you and your family on getting the first one done. Be sure to like and subscribe for kind of more content like this. If you're in Pensacola and you're a new wholesaler, feel free to reach out to Justin. We'll throw up on screen the best way to get in touch with him, likely be Instagram or Facebook, I imagine. But he's happy to help you find a buyer, go on appointments with you, anything like that. So don't be shy if it's something you need help with.
Awesome.
This thing. You're a king.
I appreciate the celebration.
I officially knight you a wholesaler. Actually, no. I officially knight you a real estate investor because you've been paid.
Yes.